Hello and welcome to episode number 26. My name is Torsten Tavel, and today's topic is going to be defining you and your life and what that may mean and how that may show up in your life. So it's really about how many definitions we have about ourselves that really doesn't allow us to really be who we are, or really sometimes even choose something different. And how often do we have definitions about who we are, or how things should be, or how something should show up, and in what way it should show up, that you don't allow it to show up in a different way? And how many different things are possible if we didn't define it, if we didn't put certain parameters around all kinds of things about all events in our lives, about who we are and how we actually should show up, or how we should interact with people, or how we should interact with our family, or in all kinds of ways. It's really interesting when you start looking at the definitions that you have, really starting with yourself. Like, who have you defined you as? What definitions do you have of yourself? Like, for instance, I am a male. I live in a certain place. I live in a certain city or a certain area in the city. Those are some things that you might define. I know a lot of people, put emphasis on where you live, like within a city. Is there a certain area you live? And if you live in that area, that means something about you. These kinds of definitions, these really basic, simple things. What have you defined about yourself? Like, what are some of the things that maybe you have a definition of as you, which may be completely different what other people have defined you as? Do you define yourself as, like, maybe you're shy, or you're not really outgoing, or you don't like people, or you don't like talking to people, you don't like interacting with people so much? Maybe that's one thing. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you have defined yourself as really, really outgoing, that you love being around people. So these are all definitions which may or may not be actually true. Have you defined that there's certain things that you can do and can't do, that put limitations in your life, or really put limitations, and also be the space or not be the space of what else is possible in your life? So if you define certain things the way things can be, maybe one of the definitions you have in your life has to do with that you can have relationships, or that you can't have a relationship, or that you always have to be in a relationship. That may be one definition of your life. So you're always seeking to be in a relationship, which maybe at certain times in your life, would bring up different possibilities if you weren't in one. If you're always looking for one, that may be one definition of yourself that you have of you. Other definitions, these are just examples that I'm giving you on how many different definitions we can have. Like, maybe another definition is that you have something around money, that you can only earn a certain amount of money. Maybe you have some definitions around money that if you earn a lot, it means something, i.e., rich people are all crooks, like things like this. So you have these definitions about something, and or about money, or about relationships, or it can be a multitude of things. And what I'm doing is I'm just, what definitions do you have, and giving you some examples of definitions that a lot of people have of themselves, which, when you have all these definitions, doesn't allow you the possibility of choosing something else, or really being something that could be way beyond any of those definitions. And what if those definitions aren't actually who you are, and who you actually and how you contribute to the world as well. And so it's like looking, and so these are definitions that you may have of yourself. And so having a definition that you can't earn more than a certain amount, say per month, well, that really will often prevent you from choosing anything else, or choosing anything that would allow you to make that happen. So by your definitions, you really put all these limitations on yourself that most of them aren't actually real. And when you start looking at them and really questioning, well, is that just a definition I have, or is that really actually true for me? And so it's really being aware of how many places, and all the places we have that we actually choose to define who and what we actually are, when we may not actually be that. And then also with those definitions of what you can create, there's something that I've realized lately about me, is that when I have a job, or when I have a project and I have to give a quotation for it, so what I find is that as soon as I do that, I will automatically try to outcreate myself and do better than what the quotation is, or estimate. And so I'll do whatever it takes, and a lot of it may be energetically and a lot of doing, but I will do what it takes to actually do much better than what that quote or estimation is. And it's almost like, for me, it's almost like a challenge for myself. Whoops. And in that challenge, I can do all these things that normally I probably wouldn't choose to do. And so it's almost like you change the speed of the outcome, and you change how fast you are able to do things, and you are able to do things way quicker than you ever thought possible. And so if you had definitions that you could only do things in a certain time frame, then that's a limitation, because maybe you can do it actually twice or 3 times as fast, and you never even considered that as a possibility. And so it's looking at all these places, and there's literally thousands of things that we define, because that's what makes up a lot of this world, is all these definitions that people have. So what if you weren't so definable, and you didn't define yourself so much? What else could show up, and what else would show up? And how could you be in this reality and with people, and how much different could your life show up as? And so it's so interesting to see the value that we give to defining things, and how much value we put on it, and that the definitions are the thing that has the importance in our life, opposed to really looking at it and going, okay, is that actually true? Are these things that I have defined, are they actually real, or can they be changed? And if they can be changed, in what way can they be changed? And so it's really looking at how often do you actually have a definition of yourself, and when you start actually looking at it, the definition isn't actually even true for you. It's not even real in your world yet, because you have defined it as so it must be. And that's often not the case. It's often not even real if you really look at it, all the definitions you have. And And all the definitions, I'll use my money as an example, and I'll use an example of a friend of mine. They told me that one of their core beliefs is that they had to work hard for the money, and they were just simply stating it as what is. They didn't really have much on it, but they're like, yeah, I just know that I have to work hard for the money. Well, then I question that in their life, because I know instances in their life that wasn't actually true. And so one of the definitions for them was that money had to be essentially cash. Well, what if money wasn't cash? So what if you didn't define money as cash? What if other things would show up in your life that were worth money, but they didn't show up in the form of cash? Well, this particular person has had 2 cars given to them. So it's like, it's not that the money, it didn't show up as cash per se, unless they would have sold those cars and got cash, then it would be cash. But they used both those things. And so because it didn't show up in a form of cash, in their world, it wasn't money. And in their world, like, they didn't see it, it showed up in a different form to them. And so it didn't fall into the category of, well, in order to get cash, I have to work hard. So it wasn't even in their world that this is a way that money did show up in their world without having to work hard for it. It literally just showed up. And so, again, like, another example of all these definitions that we have of what certain things look like and what that is in our life, and the meaning that we've actually put on it. And so where are all the places that you've defined things about you, that if you didn't have definitions of them, that something completely different could show up? And also part of that is to acknowledge that maybe things have been showing up in a completely different way, but because I defined it, all these things that have to be a certain way, like money is only cash, then I don't see all the places that I have actually created something different already and just never acknowledged it to be so. So it's really kind of cool looking at that and playing with that and just seeing, all these places that we have defined our entire life, essentially, and how much that affects our life, our being, and our experience really in this reality. Like, how much could things change if you defined things much less than you currently did and had way less definitions of you and of what is possible in your life? And when you start looking at these things, you might realize that, at least I've realized that a lot of definitions that I've had have really not assisted in expanding my life in any way. And once I realize that I do things differently, that's when things do start to change and really show up in a different way. And then I start asking questions. Okay, so with the way things show up different, how can I be or do things different in my life? And how can that contribute to the way that my life is, and how much more ease can I have with it as well? And so I've started playing with for instance, using this example of quotes, which I don't use as a hard as a sort of set in stone thing, which maybe I'll start using them more, because I realize that I will outcreate that. I'll do whatever it takes to do much better than what is in there, whatever it actually written in the quote. And it was really interesting because this particular job, I was looking for it to take 5 days. and instead it took just under 3. So it's like the speed and also what was done in the job that was done, there was extras in it as well. And so not only was it done way quicker, there was also way more done within that. So it's just interesting to see what what we can do when we're like, okay, let's do something different. And for me, it's really I choose it because it's actually fun for me. It's like I look at it as a challenge, as a almost like a game. It's like, okay, so how much can I get done in a short period of time, kind of thing. And this is the time frame that I have to play with. What if I can just speed it up? And so this is, and for me, what it was really acknowledging that is a way that I am. This is the way that I function. And so having a better knowing of that, what else is possible with that? Like, what else can I create, and how else can I do it, so that it really works for everyone involved. And also just acknowledging the speed of, for me anyways, it was the speed of what I can create when I so choose. And it's this choice of like, okay, this game and challenge, like it's fun. Like when you get engaged, when you do something that is interesting to you, it tends to show up in a completely different way. And so it's kind of like, whenever you do something, maybe it's a job at work or a project or something like that, and you're not excited about it at all, it seems to drag on forever and take forever, and you're like, oh my God, when is this thing going to end? But when you're really engaged and excited about anything, time just disappears. And things you just have a totally different energy about it, and it's actually fun, and it's that engagement and that joy and excitement that you get out of it that really kind of creates this energy that kind of builds on itself, and it just keeps on going with it. And so that's really what this is about. It's like really recognizing that there's so many places where that energy of that building and that movement and that place where you can create so much more and actually have fun and joy with it, you generally kill with definitions. You use all these definitions to slow things down, to make things small, to take all the joy and fun out of it, because it is a certain way and it can't be any other way. And that's not really how most of us function. Really, we like to play. We like to have a lot going on. We like the challenge of learning something more. It's really that place where you're constantly in a growing, expanding through whatever means, whether learning or doing something different. That's usually what's really engaging and fun, because it is something different. It is something new. And that newness of life is what makes life really fun and enjoyable, opposed to just doing the same all the time, which just gets boring and not fun, and you just want to go to sleep, and you don't even want to get up in the morning to do the same. So if you got rid of all definitions that you have about what is possible every single day and how you can engage in the world different by not having definitions of who you are or what you're supposed to do or what you're supposed to look like, or how you're supposed to present yourself in the world, and really play with those things of like, okay, what do I think I am that I'm not essentially, and and really play and look at all those places that you have made something solid about you. And so it's really like playing with that, like what definitions do you actually have of yourself? I would actually even invite you to write a list. Write a list of 10, maybe even 20 things of how you define you as you. And just write them down, because that's a good way to see, like, what definitions do you have of yourself? Like, how do you present yourself? Are you supposed, do you think you're supposed to look a certain way or be a certain way or act a certain way? Or, are you shy, or are you outgoing, or, you're good at this or you're not good at that? You have all these things that you think about yourself. And just write a list. Write a list of 10 things minimum. 20 if you can keep on going. That would be awesome. And just see what shows up and see what you have defined yourself as. And then with everything that you write down, look at that and go, okay, is this actually true about me? And also, I would encourage you to look at is, if I did this one thing different, what would show up in my life? And like, we have all these kinds of definitions around food too. Food's a really big one. What we can eat, what we can't eat. All these kinds of things. Like, what have we defined around food? What have you defined about, where you go as well? Like, maybe there's certain places you go and the other places you're like, yeah, no, I can't go there. What if you went there just to choose to go somewhere different? And it really, what it does is it takes you out of that place of what you normally think you have to choose. And so it actually gives you a different choice. So play with that. Play with a list of 10, preferably 20 things that you define as you. And do another list of 10 things that define you in your living, i.e., what you can, what you think or believe that you can or can't do. And then, and do both, like, do what you can, do 5 that you can and 5 that you can't. And then look at each one of those, and the ones that you can do, ask, well, how could I do this different? And the 10 that and the 5 that you think you can't do, ask, what if I could do them? What would that change in my life? And so it'll really get you into a space of looking at different possibilities, and get you into a space of becoming aware of the places, or some of the places that you have defined as you. And if those weren't in place, what else could you choose? What else could you be? I mean, the one thing that I have done a lot of in the past is traveling. And what's really cool about traveling is that you actually can be anybody. Because often when you go traveling, you don't know anyone. You meet all these people and they don't actually know who you are. So you can literally be anybody. And you can play with that, and it gives you actually freedom to choose to be in different ways. And not only that, when you travel, you get to see the way different people be, different cultures, how they are with food, how their daily lives are, in which way that they live. And so you get to see how different people live, and you also get to see all the places that they have, what they have defined as them, different cultures, all the definitions that they have in that particular cultures about certain things. You go to certain places and there's all these protocols, how you're supposed to greet somebody. Some places you shake hands, some places you kiss on the cheek once or twice or 3 times or whatever it is. So all these different definitions that show up in culture, and all these things that you're expected to do. And people don't even know why they do them. That's just what you do. It's defined as the way that you're supposed to greet somebody. And so it's really interesting when we see this, and when you become aware of all the places that we have defined as a way of doing something, which, using greeting as an example, you can greet people in all kinds of ways. There isn't just one way to greet someone. Whether it's kissing, or whether it's a hug, or whether it's a handshake, or none of that, or where there's no touching, or there's bowing, or whatever it is. Like, there's literally, hundreds of different ways of greeting somebody. And so there isn't one way that it absolutely has to be. And so this is a good example of, then you start seeing, like, if you didn't define it that it has to be this one way, how many different ways can it show up? And then you can start looking for all those different ways that it can show up, and maybe how you can show up in all these different ways, and really play with that and see what shows up, and leave comments and let me know. And I would be interested in hearing what things showed up for you when you wrote about what definitions you have about you and your life, and what you can and can't do, and see how, see if they're actually true for you, and see if there's actually something in there you're like, what if I looked at this one thing that I can't do, and what if I actually could do it? What if I actually went to see if I could actually do it, instead of just having a definition of that I can't? Maybe you actually can, even know you could. So play with that and see what shows up, and come play again next week, same time, same place, and we'll do another one of these half-hour plays. Thank you so much. See you next time. Bye.